Picture this, you are standing on a patch of dead grass, staring at a box made of wood, drywall, and a questionable amount of asbestos. The roof is sagging, the paint is peeling, it smells vaguely of wet dog and despair. And you, a supposedly rational human being, are about to sign a stack of papers legally obligating you to pay $800,000 for this box. Actually, wait, let us do the math, because the math is the part they do not teach you in school. With a 30-year mortgage at 7% interest, you are not paying $800,000. You are paying $1.9 million. Let that sink in. You are paying nearly $2 million and dedicating the next 360 months of your finite human existence to a bank. Why? Because society, your parents, and a guy named Dave on the internet told you that renting is throwing your money away. They told you that the American dream is a 2-car garage and a lawn you have to mow every Saturday until your back gives out. They told you buying a house is the ultimate, undeniable, foolproof path to building wealth. They are lying to you. Or at the very least, they are operating on financial advice that expired around the same time people stopped using dial-up internet. Buying a house right now, in this current economic reality, is not a stepping stone to financial freedom. It is a meticulously designed, beautifully marketed, soul-crushing financial trap. And today, we are going to tear down the drywall, rip up the floorboards, and expose the ugly truth about the modern housing market. We are going to look at the terrifying math they hide in the fine print. And most importantly, we are going to show you exactly what you should be doing with your money instead, if you actually want to be rich, free, and completely immune to the nightmare of a leaking roof. To understand why the trap is so perfectly set, we have to travel back in time. We need to look at the messy, chaotic, and frankly bizarre origin of the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, because this financial product did not fall from the sky. It was invented in the 1930s out of pure, unadulterated panic. The year is 1934. The Great Depression is ravaging the country. The housing market has completely collapsed. People are losing their homes left and right because mortgages back then were basically ticking time bombs. You would get a loan for 5 years, pay only the interest, and then at the end of the 5 years, a massive balloon payment for the entire price of the house was due. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday and owing the bank $40,000 by noon. When the economy crashed, nobody could pay. So the government stepped in. They created the Federal Housing Administration. They said, hey, what if we stretch the loan out over 20 or 30 years? What if people just paid a tiny little bit every month until they died? The banks hated it. They said, this is insane. Nobody will pay us back for 30 years. But the government insured the loans, the banks went along with it, and the 30-year mortgage was born. Fast forward to the post-war boom, the 1950s and 60s. Enter your grandfather. Let us call him Arthur. Arthur comes home, gets a job at the local zipper factory, and decides to buy a house. He walks into a bank, shakes the manager's hand, and buys a brand new 4-bedroom house with a white picket fence for $12,000. That is not a typo. $12,000. Arthur's mortgage payment is less than what you currently pay for a premium gym membership you never use. Arthur lives in the house for 40 years. The economy booms. Inflation does its thing. The population explodes. The supply of land stays exactly the same because, as they say, they are not making any more of it. By the time Arthur retires, his $12,000 house is worth $600,000. Arthur looks like an absolute financial genius. He sits you down at Thanksgiving, points a turkey leg at you and says, listen closely. Real estate only goes up. You need to buy property. Stop buying fancy coffee and buy dirt. It is the best investment you will ever make. And Arthur is not lying. He is just oblivious. He's a guy who bought a winning lottery ticket 50 years ago and now thinks his strategy of buying lottery tickets at that specific gas station on a Tuesday is bulletproof financial advice. Arthur benefited from a historic, unrepeatable combination of massive economic expansion, localized baby booms, artificially low interest rates, and a complete lack of globalized institutional competition. Which brings us to the pivot, the ugly reality of the modern era. You are not Arthur, and the year is not 1965. The problem we face today is that the game has fundamentally changed, but the rules we are told to play by are exactly the same. You are trying to play Monopoly, but half the properties are already owned by a faceless algorithm, and the bank changes the interest rates every time you roll the dice. Let us break down the industry you are trying to enter, but let us explain it like you are a very intelligent 5-year-old. Imagine you want to buy a shiny red bicycle. In a normal world, you give the bicycle shop money, they give you the bicycle, and you ride away. But the housing market is a special kind of bicycle shop. In this shop, the bicycle costs 10 times your entire allowance, so you have to borrow money from a big scary man in a suit. He says, I will give you the money, but you have to pay me extra money every month just for the privilege of holding my money. That is called interest. But wait, there is more. The government steps in and says, hey, nice bicycle. Because you own that bicycle, you have to pay us a fee every single year forever. If you do not pay the fee, we take the bicycle. That is property tax. Then a guy with a clipboard walks up and says, what if the bicycle catches on fire? What if a tree falls on the bicycle? You need to pay me a monthly fee or else you are ruined. That is insurance. And finally, because the bicycle is made of cheap metal and bad rubber, the chain snaps, the tires pop, and the paint peels. You have to buy new parts constantly just to keep the bicycle from falling apart. That is maintenance. When people tell you that renting is throwing money away, they are ignoring the fact that homeownership is essentially a subscription service to unrecoverable costs. Let us look at the 5 horsemen of the housing apocalypse. First, property taxes. You never truly own your home. You just rent it from the government at a variable rate that goes up every time your city decides it wants a new public park or a monument to a local politician. Second, maintenance. When you rent, a broken toilet is a phone call. Hello, landlord. The toilet is erupting like Mount Vesuvius. Please fix it. Goodbye. When you own the house, a broken toilet is a plumbing emergency that costs you $1,000 and ruins your weekend. The rule of thumb is that you will spend 1 to 2% of your home's total value every year just to keep it from crumbling into dust. On an $800,000 house, that is $8,000 to $16,000 a year in purely evaporated cash. Third, insurance. Climate change is doing wonderful things for home insurance premiums. In some states, insurance companies are just packing up their bags and leaving. Good luck getting coverage when your neighborhood is reclassified as a flood zone because a local creek got a little too aggressive. Fourth, the cost of capital. This is the big one. When you lock up $160,000 for a 20% down payment, that money is dead. It is trapped in the drywall. It is not compounding in the stock market. It is not earning you dividends. The opportunity cost of that down payment is staggering. And fifth, transaction costs. Buying and selling a house is not like trading a stock on your phone for a $0 fee. Oh no. The real estate industry has designed a beautiful system where they slice off 6 to 10% of the entire asset's value every time it changes hands. You have real estate agent commissions, title insurance, appraisal fees, inspection fees, loan origination fees. It is a financial bloodbath before you even get the keys. Speaking of things that secretly drain your resources, steal your peace of mind, and leave you feeling completely violated, let us talk about your digital footprint. Just like a leaky roof can suddenly cost you thousands of dollars, your personal data floating around the internet can lead to identity theft, non-stop spam, and serious financial headaches. Every time you sign up for a newsletter, buy something online, or casually doom scroll, data brokers are scooping up your name, your address, your phone number, and selling it to the highest bidder. It is like leaving the front door of your house wide open while carrying a sign that says, "Please take my television." This is where Incogni comes in. Incogni is an automated personal data removal service that acts like a vicious guard dog for your digital life. You sign up, give them the basic info, and they systematically hunt down these data brokers and legally force them to delete your information. They do the exhausting, frustrating paperwork so you do not have to. It is the digital equivalent of changing the locks and installing a security system. If you want to stop getting weird scam texts from numbers you do not know and take back control of your privacy, use the link in the description to get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Stop letting the internet treat your data like an all-you-can-eat buffet. Now back to the housing trap. We have covered the invisible costs, but now we must enter the climax of our story, the near-death experience of the modern homebuyer, because knowing the math is one thing. Actually trying to buy a house in a seller's market is a psychological thriller that will push you to the brink of insanity. Let us say you ignore my warnings, you save your money, you skip the vacations, you eat nothing but lentils and tap water for 5 years, you assemble your down payment, you are ready. You walk into an open house on a Sunday afternoon. It is a modest 3-bedroom ranch. The photos online looked amazing, the lighting was immaculate, the furniture was minimalist and chic. You walk through the door and immediately realize the photos were heavily doctored. The minimalist chic furniture was hiding massive cracks in the foundation. The immaculate lighting was masking the fact that the entire house smells like a chain-smoking ferret. But it does not matter. The house is listed for $500,000, which in today's market is basically a clearance aisle discount. You turn to your real estate agent, a woman named Brenda who drinks 4 iced coffees a day and communicates entirely in aggressive optimism. You say, "Brenda, I like it. Let us offer the asking price, $500,000. Brenda looks at you like you just suggested sacrificing a goat in the living room. She laughs. It is a cold, hollow laugh. She says, "Oh honey, sweet, innocent honey, 500,000 is the starting bid. This is not a retail store. This is an auction for survival. We already have 20 offers on the table." You panic, you say, "What? 20 offers? Who are these people?" Brenda taps her clipboard. "Well, we have a doctor moving from California. We have a guy named Bryce who claims to be a digital nomad and offered in cash. And oh yes, we have BlackRock, or at least a subsidiary of a private equity firm that wants to turn this neighborhood into a single-family rental portfolio. They do not even care what the house looks like. They just want the zip code." You feel the sweat pooling on your forehead. You say, "Okay, Brenda, what do we do?" Brenda leans in, her eyes are wide. She says, "We go to war. We offer 550,000. We waive the financing contingency. We waive the appraisal contingency. And most importantly, we waive the inspection." You freeze, you say, "Wait, waive the inspection. What if the roof is about to collapse? What if the plumbing is made of paper mâche?" Brenda shrugs, "Then you fix it, or you lose the house. Do you want the house, or do you want to keep paying rent to a guy who drives a leased BMW?" The fear of missing out takes over. The cultural brainwashing kicks in. You think about Arthur and his $12,000 mansion. You sign the paper. You offer 50,000 over asking, entirely in a panic-induced blackout. Miraculously, you win. You are the proud owner of the ferret-scented box. Fast forward to day one of homeownership. You unlock the door. The house is empty. It is quiet. You feel a brief, fleeting moment of pride. "I own this," you think. "This dirt is my dirt." Then you hear a sound, a drip, drip, drip. You walk into the kitchen. There is a puddle forming under the sink. You open the cabinet. The pipes are corroded. You call a plumber. The plumber arrives. He is a man who looks like he has seen the dark underbelly of the universe. He shines his flashlight under the sink, whistles a low, grim tune, and stands up. He says, "Well, buddy, I have bad news and I have worse news. The bad news is this pipe is dead. The worst news is, this pipe is connected to the main sewer line, which is completely blocked by tree roots. Have you noticed a smell?" You swallow hard. "How much?" The plumber pulls out an iPad. "To dig up the yard, replace the line, and fix this sink. I can do it for $14,000, and I need a check today." Your heart stops. You do not have $14,000. You gave all your money to Brenda and the bank to win the bidding war. You have exactly $400 in your checking account and a half-eaten bag of lentils. You are forced to take out a high-interest personal loan just to make your house legally habitable. You are officially house poor. You spend your weekends watching YouTube tutorials on how to patch drywall because you cannot afford a contractor. You do not go out. You do not travel. You sit in your living room, staring at the walls, realizing that you do not own the house. The house owns you. And then the final nail in the coffin. Your boss calls you into the office. He says, "Great news. We are promoting you to regional manager, but you have to move to Chicago next month. It is a 50% pay bump. It is the opportunity of a lifetime." You go home, you look at the math. If you sell the house now, after only owning it for a year, the 6% real estate commission, the closing costs, and the early loan payoff penalties will entirely wipe out your equity. In fact, you will have to write a check for $20,000 at the closing table just to get rid of the house. You cannot take the promotion. You are geographically locked. You are anchored to a specific set of coordinates on the earth because you bought a box of wood. You are trapped. This is the nightmare scenario that plays out thousands of times a day across the country. But there is a master plan. There is a way out. There is a mathematical truth that can set you free from the cult of homeownership, and it is entirely based on a simple, deeply misunderstood concept. Do this instead. Rent and invest the difference. I know, I can hear the boomers screaming through the screen. Renting is throwing your money away. Renting pays your landlord's mortgage. Let us destroy this myth with extreme prejudice. Here is the most important sentence in this entire script. Rent is the maximum amount you will pay for housing in a given month. A mortgage is the minimum amount you will pay for housing in a given month. When you write a check for $2,000 to a landlord, that is it. Your financial obligation is over. If the roof caves in, if the water heater explodes, if a raccoon family takes up residence in the attic, it is not your problem. You send an email, you go to sleep, and someone else's profit margin takes the hit. But renting only works as a wealth-building strategy if you are disciplined. You cannot just rent a luxury apartment, spend your excess cash on designer clothes and mechanical keyboards, and expect to get rich. You must invest the difference. Let us break down the exact math, side by side. we will look at 30 years of investing. Meet buyer Bob and renter Rachel. Bob and Rachel both have $100,000 saved up. They both have $3,000 a month to allocate toward their living situation and their financial future. Bob decides to buy a $500,000 house. He puts his $100,000 down, his mortgage at a 7% interest rate plus property taxes, plus insurance, plus a conservative 1% for maintenance, comes out to roughly $3,500 a month. Wait, Bob only had $3,000 to spend. Bob is already house poor. He cuts his grocery budget and stops saving for retirement to make the payments. Over 30 years, Bob pays his mortgage. His house appreciates. Historically, real estate appreciates at roughly the rate of inflation, maybe slightly higher in hot markets. Let us be generous and say his house appreciates at 4% a year. After 30 years, Bob's house is worth roughly $1.6 million. Bob throws a party. He feels incredibly rich. He owns a $1.6 million asset free and clear. Now let us look at renter Rachel. Rachel looks at the housing market, laughs, and signs a lease for an apartment that costs $2,000 a month. Because she originally budgeted $3,000 for housing, she has $1,000 left over every single month. What does Rachel do with her $100,000 down payment? She does not give it to a bank. She puts it entirely into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. What does she do with her extra $1,000 a month? She aggressively invests it into that same index fund. Over the same 30 years, the stock market historically returns an average of 8 to 10% per year. Let us be conservative and use 8%. Let us run the compound interest calculator. Rachel's initial $100,000, compounded at 8% for 30 years, turns into $1,006,000. But wait, we have to add her monthly contributions. Rachel investing $1,000 every month for 30 years, compounded at 8%, adds another $1.4 million to her portfolio. After 30 years, renter Rachel has a liquid stock portfolio worth $2.4 million. Bob has a house worth $1.6 million. Rachel beat Bob by $800,000, but that is not even the full story. To access his wealth, Bob has to sell his house, pay a 6% commission to a real estate agent, which is almost $100,000 right off the top, pay closing costs, and then physically move all his possessions to a new location. Or he has to take out a reverse mortgage and borrow against his own equity, paying interest to a bank once again. Rachel's wealth is entirely liquid. With a few clicks on her phone, she can sell shares and transfer cash to her bank account instantly. She pays long-term capital gains tax, sure, but she has absolute control and flexibility. More importantly, look at the quality of life over those 30 years. When Bob got offered a promotion in another state, he couldn't take it because he was trapped in a mortgage. Rachel got the same offer, packed her boxes, broke her lease for a minor penalty, and moved across the country to double her salary. That salary increase allowed her to invest even more money, accelerating her wealth exponentially. When Bob's roof collapsed in year 12, he had to drain his emergency fund and take on credit card debt to fix it. When Rachel's apartment building had a plumbing failure, she moved to a nicer building down the street and let the landlord deal with the construction noise. The master plan is realizing that homeownership is not an investment. It is a lifestyle choice, and it is an incredibly expensive lifestyle choice. If you want a backyard for your dog, if you want to paint the walls neon green, if you want to build a custom woodworking shop in the garage, and you are willing to pay a premium for that luxury, then buy a house. But do not buy a house because you think it is the only way to build wealth. Buy it knowing that it is a luxury consumption item. If you want absolute financial optimization, flexibility, and a historically proven path to liquid millions, you rent housing and you buy equities. You buy fractional ownership in Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, and Google. Let these massive corporations go to war, invent new technologies, and generate massive profits, and you just sit back and collect the compounding growth. Do not buy a box of wood, buy a slice of the global economy. Let us establish a rule. It is called the 5% rule, and it is the ultimate cheat code for deciding whether you should buy or rent in any given market. Take the value of the home you want to buy. Let us say it is $600,000. Multiply that by 5%. That gives you $30,000. Divide that by 12. That is $2,500. The 5% rule states that your unrecoverable costs of home ownership, taxes, maintenance, and the cost of capital, will roughly equal 5% of the home's value per year. So if you can rent an equivalent home in the same neighborhood for less than $2,500 a month, renting is strictly, mathematically, unconditionally the better financial move. If the rent is higher than that, then buying might actually make sense. But in today's market, with interest rates hovering around 6 or 7% and home prices inflated by years of artificial scarcity, the math almost never works in favor of buying. The scale is completely broken. The system wants you to buy. The government subsidizes homeownership because homeowners are stable. They stay put. They pay taxes. They vote for local bonds. They are trapped in the economic machine. A mobile, renting, investing population is unpredictable. They can leave when things get bad. They have options. The banks want you to buy because mortgage-backed securities are the lifeblood of the modern financial casino. They need your 30-year commitment to package and sell to institutional investors. The real estate industry wants you to buy because their entire multi-billion-dollar ecosystem is funded by the 6% friction fee they charge every time you move. Everyone is getting rich off your desire for a white picket fence, except you. So let us bring this all the way back to the beginning. You are standing on that patch of dead grass, looking at that overpriced, ferret-scented box. The realtor is breathing down your neck, whispering sweet nothings about building equity and outbidding BlackRock. You look at the paperwork, you look at the 30-year timeline, you look at the amortization schedule that shows you paying almost entirely interest for the first 10 years of the loan. And you smile. You hand the pen back to Brenda. You say, "No thanks, I think I am going to pass." Brenda gasps. She says, "But you are throwing your money away on rent. You are missing the American dream." You look her dead in the eye and say, "The American dream was a marketing campaign invented to stabilize the post-war economy. I am going to go rent a nice apartment with a pool I do not have to clean, and I am going to buy index funds until my passive income exceeds my living expenses. Have fun dealing with the plumbing." And you walk away. Because the ultimate trap of the housing market isn't just financial, it is psychological. It is the belief that success is defined by a deed and a property line, but true wealth is not measured by the square footage of your living room. True wealth is flexibility. True wealth is liquidity. True wealth is the ability to wake up on a Tuesday, realize you hate your job, your city, or your neighbor, and simply leave without asking a bank for permission. Do not let a romanticized idea of homeownership lock you in a financial prison. Buy assets that pay you. Stop buying liabilities that constantly ask you for more money. The house is a trap. The market is the escape route. Choose wisely.